This is Keith Jordan of the Hudson Valley Guild of Mental Health Professionals, and I'm going to be doing an interview today with Katie Down, one of our guild members. For those of you who don't know about the Hudson Valley Guild of Mental Health Professionals, it's a nonprofit voluntary association of mental health professionals who are qualified and licensed to provide mental health services, therapy to people in our community and throughout New York State now with teletherapy. There are members that are in private practice and also agency settings. Basically, we exist to help promote the profession and help consumers find therapists who would be available to be of assistance to them. So today, as I said, I'm interviewing Katie Down. And Katie, could you tell me a little bit about what you do professionally?
Absolutely, Keith. So I've been in private practice for over 10 years. I'm a music psychotherapist and trauma specialist. I mostly work with trauma survivors and female trauma survivors of sexual assault and intimate partner violence. I have worked with children and the elderly as well as a licensed creative arts therapist. I'm based in the Hudson Valley, and at the moment, I am a full time professor at SUNY New Paltz in their music therapy program.
Now, can you tell me how music therapy is related to trauma treatment and how does that work?
It's always a mystery, a little bit, but if we consider how music and sound affects the nervous system, and trauma being a nervous system response in a way to events that are out of our control, that when the rug is taken out from under us, we are often stuck in a nervous system response. And with verbal psychotherapy, of course, that can help tremendously. I'm also an EMDR specialist, so I know the effects of particular kinds of trauma methodologies to work with trauma. And then if it's a strictly music therapy session rather than a session that has a little bit of music and sound in it, that is an opportunity for the survivors not to necessarily rehash and go through again and again what happened to them or what may even still be happening to them, depending on what their situation is, but rather go right into an emotional expression, a feeling state through sound and music that can be a very safe container for those complex emotions. There might be some lyric analysis in which a client brings in a song that relates to their story or a song that brings them a sense of grounding or connection. And we'll listen to the song together and then take it apart, sort of verse by verse. We might write a song together. And that's actually something that I'm in the process of completing. That's another project with Angel Band that has that we're working with individual survivors and writing songs with them about their stories of survival. So, music therapy can go in lots and lots of different directions.
So what if somebody says, well, this seems interesting, but I'm definitely not musical. I can't sing and I definitely don't play an instrument. I've never written a song. So I guess this is, for somebody else.
Yeah, of course, that comes up all the time with music therapy, but we assure everybody who expresses interest that no musical experience whatsoever is required. This is a lot of improvisation, exploration, a lot of support, and none of our, well, not none, but many of our survivors are not musicians at all. Yeah, there's absolutely no need for any musical knowledge for individual music psychotherapy or group music therapy.
So what got you interested in this kind of work?
I'm a musician first. When I went to my grad school training in Boston, I started to work a little bit in the schools there as a teaching artist and as a program coordinator for an outreach program. So I was working with a lot of underserved populations with children, mostly children and teens. And I saw firsthand the effects of music on, I would say, a pretty traumatized population. That started the wheels spinning. And then I began to work for an NGO, non governmental organization. Went to Bosnia, saw the effects of music therapy on the traumatized populations there. And then fast forward a few more years, moved to New York City and did a few interesting projects again with children, and was inspired by a colleague of mine who's a filmmaker. She was filming a project that I was doing with improvisation and children, and we made an album together. And she said, "You really should become a music therapist."
So can you say more about your education?
I went to NYU for music therapy. And that was my second master's degree. My first is in composition from New England Conservatory. And then I did postgraduate training at the Institute for Contemporary Psychotherapy in their trauma training program. And then I also became certified in EMDR through Laurel Parnell.
So can people use an insurance plan for your services, or is it all self-pay?
At the moment, I still take Cigna for insurance, and a lot of my clients can receive a partial, if not almost full reimbursement through their insurance companies. So if they don't have Cigna, they can reach out to their provider and find out if there's some reimbursement, which a lot of the time there is.
And can you tell me how you get referrals?
I get referrals from Psychology Today, of course, and I'm also on Zen Care. So I get referrals from that particular side. I also get a lot of personal referrals. I get referrals from psychiatrists and MDs. I think it's partly because I also work very holistically. So I'm in the sort of holistic community of people working with the body. So I get referrals from chiropractors and other kinds of body workers because of the work I do in sound as well as music psychotherapy.
It sounds like there's quite a few things that set you apart from other therapists. One is that you specialize in dealing with trauma and you specifically deal with music therapy. You also mentioned that you're a specialist in EMDR. Is there anything more you want to say about how you might operate differently from other therapists?
I think that maybe just the obvious one is that I work in two different realms or a few different realms. So there's the music psychotherapy component, which is very much about not only the I and the thou, the in between client and therapist relationship, but also more of a receptive part of my work is that I'm a Reiki practitioner and that I use sound in my work as well. So some of my clients may sort of kind of want both. I work quite somatically, and I think that when we are in a deep listening place, it's when we can begin to slow down and the central nervous system and begin to use our breath to regulate. And so it's all about that awareness of the body first. Then we can kind of get into the verbal processing or whatever needs to be worked through in the session.
For those who are not familiar with it, can you say something more about what EMDR is?
Sure. So it stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. EMDR works with bilateral stimulation. So the eye movement part has now been adapted, and we improvise a little bit. I actually don't use eye movement. I use tappers. We call them, there are vibrational little pods that you put in your hand. You may know this, but I'm just telling you. So, and that is regulated not only with the intensity of the vibration, but also the frequency of the beats. So you can have a rapid tempo and you can slow it down, which actually corresponds a lot to music therapy because one of the principles that we operate from is called the ISO principle, which is matching the mood of the client. And we match that through sound, through beat, through timbre, through texture, through all of these different elements of music. So it's principally the same thing with EMDR, that if that client is quite ramped up or is having an ab reaction, we might start the tempo of the tappers at a higher speed. Usually that is coming from the guidance of the client. I ask them what feels right. Currently, because I'm on Zoom, we're not using the tappers. So we invite our clients to tap themselves using this technique of the butterfly hug, is what it's called. And then I'll ask them to find the tempo that works best for them, and they will continue, they will do it this way. And then we pause and process and then come back. Principally, that somatic aspect of the bilateral stimulation is a huge part of our work. It also goes into deep imagery and a lot of memory recall. And it is extremely effective for trauma work. And I've been doing it for many years.
You mentioned Zoom. So to put this in context, this interview is taking place in September of 2021. We therapists have been using teletherapy for a while now. Do you find that your work is effective through teletherapy, and do you plan to continue once the pandemic situation has gone past us?
So if I do end up seeing clients back in person, which I would dearly love to do, and I miss it terribly, it will probably be in the Hudson Valley because this is where I live now. But a lot of my clients are actually based in the city, so you know, it's a tough one. But for now, we've been able to make Zoom work, and for the foreseeable future, I would say we're sticking to Zoom. For the moment, I may make some exceptions, and I've been sort of looking at spaces up here in the New Paltz area and the Newburgh area, Beacon, but I haven't made any strong commitments yet to actually start to open a physical office yet. So it's hard.
So how would someone contact you?
They can email me, of course. I have a website, so that's called soundwellcenter.com. And explains a little bit about the work, the kind of work that I do, and the offerings that I have. And so they can email me directly through soundwellcenter.com.
Well, it sounds like you do some very important work. And it was a pleasure speaking with you.
So
And
nice to meet
best,
you.
yeah, the best of luck with all of your work. So thanks again, and we're fortunate to have you in the Guild.
I'm so happy to be part of it.